Earth is not just home, it is a requirement. Humans often speak about Earth as if it were simply our place of origin, a starting point, a cradle we will eventually leave behind. We imagine that once technology becomes advanced enough, once rockets become powerful enough, once machines become intelligent enough, we will naturally outgrow our home planet. That Earth is optional. But modern science suggests something very different. Earth is not just where humans began, it is the condition that makes humans possible. Every living system on this planet exists within a narrow range of physical parameters: temperature, pressure, chemical balance, radiation levels. Life did not conquer these conditions. Life adapted to them. And humans, more than any other species, are deeply specialized to Earth's environment. We are not general-purpose organisms. We are finely tuned biological systems shaped by millions of years under one very specific set of rules. Gravity is one of those rules. On Earth, gravity is constant, gentle, and ever-present. It shapes our skeletons, our muscles, our circulation. Even our sense of balance depends on it. Remove gravity, and the human body does not simply adjust, it begins to malfunction. Outside Earth, gravity becomes either too weak, too strong, or entirely absent. In low-gravity environments, bones lose density, muscles weaken. The cardiovascular system struggles to regulate blood flow. The body behaves as if it no longer understands which direction is down. This is not a temporary inconvenience, it is a systemic breakdown. Humans did not evolve to function in variable gravitational fields. We evolved to function in one. Earth's gravity is not merely supportive, it is instructional. Every cell in the human body has learned to expect it. When that expectation is violated, biology does not negotiate, it fails. But gravity is only one layer of Earth's support system. Another is the atmosphere. Earth's atmosphere does more than provide oxygen. It regulates temperature. It filters radiation. It maintains pressure within a range compatible with human physiology. Outside Earth, this balance collapses. In space, there is no air pressure. The human body, designed to exist under constant atmospheric compression, cannot survive without artificial containment. Without pressure, fluids boil at body temperature. Tissues swell. Gas expands inside the lungs and bloodstream. Survival requires a mechanical substitute for an environment that Earth provides effortlessly. Even on planets with atmospheres, conditions are rarely compatible. Too thin, too thick, too toxic. Mars, often described as Earth's sibling, has an atmosphere less than 1% as dense as Earth's. It offers no meaningful protection against radiation or temperature extremes. It is not hostile by accident, it is hostile by nature. Earth's atmosphere is not a bonus feature, it is a prerequisite. And it did not arise quickly. It took billions of years of geological activity, biological feedback, and chemical equilibrium to reach its current state. Humans are beneficiaries of that history. We are not independent of it. Another invisible gift of Earth is its magnetic field, a planetary-scale shield generated by the movement of molten metals deep within the core. This magnetic field deflects charged particles from the Sun and from distant cosmic sources. Without it, Earth would resemble Mars, stripped, irradiated, inhospitable. Humans rarely think about the magnetic field because it works silently. But outside Earth, its absence becomes impossible to ignore. Radiation levels increase dramatically. DNA damage accumulates. The nervous system becomes vulnerable. Cancer risk rises. These are not theoretical dangers, they are measured realities. Earth protects human life in ways no spacecraft can fully replicate. We can simulate gravity briefly. We can carry oxygen in tanks. We can shield against radiation partially. But simulation is not replacement. Artificial systems fail. Earth does not. This leads to a critical misunderstanding. Many assume that survival outside Earth is simply a matter of engineering. Build stronger habitats, design better suits, improve life support systems. But survival is not the same as functionality. A human can be kept alive in extreme conditions. That does not mean the human body is operating normally. Life support does not recreate Earth, it approximates it. And approximation has limits. The longer humans remain outside Earth, the more those limits reveal themselves. What begins as discomfort becomes degradation. What begins as adaptation becomes dependence on machines. This dependence introduces a new kind of fragility. On Earth, human survival is distributed across ecosystems, communities, and natural cycles. Outside Earth, survival is concentrated into sealed systems. Every breath becomes technological. Every mistake becomes critical. In such environments, humans are not explorers, they are patients, sustained by machines, protected from reality, isolated from the conditions that shaped their biology. This is not freedom, it is containment. The idea that humans can simply struggle less outside Earth once technology improves rests on a flawed assumption, that Earth is merely one environment among many. But Earth is not interchangeable, it is unique. Not because it is special in a cosmic sense, but because humans are specialized for it. Outside Earth, humans do not struggle because they are weak. They struggle because they are out of context. Biology is context dependent. Remove the context and performance declines. Eventually, viability disappears. This does not mean humans should not explore space. Exploration is compatible with limitation, but colonization assumes compatibility, and compatibility does not exist by default. The more science reveals about human biology, the clearer this becomes. Earth is not just home, it is a system that humans cannot yet replace. And until that changes, humans will continue to struggle outside the only environment they were ever designed to inhabit. Earth is not just home, it is a biological system. When we speak about leaving Earth, we often describe it as leaving a place, a planet, a location, a point in space. But Earth is not merely a place. Earth is a system. And the human body is not simply adapted to Earth, it is inseparable from it. Every cell in your body assumes that this system exists, not consciously, not intellectually, but biologically. On Earth, gravity is constant. It is not something we notice, it does not demand attention, and yet it silently shapes every process in the body, from the way blood circulates, to how bones maintain their structure, to how organs remain positioned inside the torso. Gravity is not optional, it is foundational. The moment humans leave Earth, this foundation disappears. In orbit, gravity does not gradually weaken, it vanishes. And when it does, the human body begins to behave in ways that feel almost alien. Fluids no longer settle downward, they shift upward. Blood pools in the chest and head. The face swells. Pressure builds behind the eyes. Astronauts often describe a constant sensation of fullness in the skull. This is not discomfort, it is biological confusion. The cardiovascular system, designed to push blood upward against gravity, no longer knows how hard to work. The heart weakens, blood volume decreases. Over time, the body begins to assume that gravity will never return, and it adapts accordingly. Bones follow the same logic. On Earth, bones are constantly under stress, walking, standing, even sitting. This stress tells the body that bone strength is necessary. In space, that signal disappears. The body responds efficiently and dangerously. It stops maintaining bone density. Calcium is released into the bloodstream. Bones become porous, fragile. Loss rates can reach 1 to 2% per month. This is not aging, it is accelerated structural decay. Muscles, too, begin to vanish. Even with rigorous daily exercise, astronauts experience muscle atrophy. The body is not malfunctioning, it is optimizing. Why maintain muscle mass in an environment where force is no longer required? Efficiency becomes vulnerability. The problem is not that space is harsh. The problem is that Earth is precise. Earth provides exactly the conditions the human body expects. Remove even one of those conditions, and the system destabilizes. This reveals a deeper truth. Human biology is not general purpose. It is specialized. It is tuned to a narrow range of conditions with remarkable precision: temperature, pressure, atmospheric composition, radiation levels, gravity. All of these exist on Earth within ranges that support life. Outside Earth, those ranges collapse. Consider the atmosphere. On Earth, oxygen makes up about 21% of the air. This balance is critical. Too little oxygen and cells starve. Too much and oxygen becomes toxic. The atmosphere also provides pressure. This pressure keeps bodily fluids stable. It prevents gases in the blood from forming dangerous bubbles. In space, pressure drops to zero. Without constant technological intervention, the human body cannot survive seconds, not minutes, seconds. Technology can simulate atmosphere. It can regulate oxygen. It can maintain pressure. But these systems must work perfectly, continuously, without interruption. Earth never needs maintenance. Space does. This creates a fundamental asymmetry. On Earth, life is passive. You live because the environment supports you. In space, life is active. You survive only as long as systems remain functional. The moment they fail, the environment wins. And systems always fail eventually, not because of incompetence, but because complexity invites error. The more life depends on technology, the more fragile it becomes. This is not pessimism, it is systems theory. Even small deviations matter. Slight changes in carbon dioxide levels impair cognition. Minor temperature fluctuations affect metabolism. Small radiation leaks accumulate damage over time. Earth absorbs these fluctuations effortlessly. Space amplifies them. What makes this struggle profound is not that humans are weak, it is that humans are precise. We are not designed for variability, we are designed for consistency. Earth provides consistency, space does not. This raises a question rarely addressed honestly. If the human body requires such a narrow set of conditions to function, what does it mean to remove it from its native system? Are we adapting the environment to us, or are we merely delaying failure? For short missions, technology compensates. For longer missions, damage accumulates. For permanent presence, the question becomes unavoidable. Can a species truly belong in an environment that constantly degrades it? The struggle outside Earth is not a battle against distance. It is a battle against mismatch between biology and physics, between expectation and reality. The human body expects Earth. Space offers something else entirely. And yet, despite this mismatch, the desire to leave persists, not because it is easy, not because it is safe, but because humans are driven by curiosity, by ambition, by the belief that limits exist to be challenged. But there's a difference between challenging a limit and ignoring it. The body does not negotiate. It responds, silently, relentlessly. And as long as humans remain biologically earthbound, the struggle outside Earth will continue, not as a dramatic failure, but as a slow, measurable erosion. The gravity problem. A body designed for one world. Gravity is so constant in our lives that we rarely think about it. It presses our feet into the ground. It keeps our blood flowing downward. It shapes the way our muscles work and how our bones grow. From the moment a human is born, every movement, every heartbeat, every breath assumes the presence of gravity. Not just any gravity, Earth's gravity. The human body is not a general-purpose machine. It is a highly specialized biological system, finely tuned to one planetary environment, 1G. Remove that condition, and the consequences are immediate. In space, gravity does not disappear completely, but it becomes irrelevant. Orbit creates the illusion of weightlessness, and that illusion is enough to destabilize the human body. Within days of entering microgravity, the body begins to reconfigure itself. Bones, no longer bearing weight, begin to lose density. The body interprets the absence of stress as a signal that bone mass is unnecessary. Calcium is released into the bloodstream. Bones become lighter, weaker. Astronauts lose bone density at a rate far exceeding even the most severe cases of osteoporosis on Earth. And unlike age-related bone loss, this process is accelerated, systemic, and difficult to reverse. Muscles follow a similar pattern. Without gravity, muscles no longer need to work as hard. The legs weaken, the core weakens. Even muscles responsible for posture begin to atrophy. Daily exercise can slow the decline, but it cannot stop it. Exercise mimics stress. It does not replace gravity. The difference matters. The cardiovascular system also changes. On Earth, the heart works constantly to pump blood upward against gravity. In space, that resistance disappears. Blood redistributes toward the head. The heart, facing less resistance, begins to lose muscle mass. Over time, it becomes less efficient. When astronauts return to Earth, many experience dizziness, fainting, and difficulty standing. Their bodies must relearn how to exist under gravity. But perhaps the most unsettling effects occur in places we cannot easily see, inside the skull. In microgravity, fluids shift upward. Pressure builds behind the eyes. The shape of the eyeball changes. The optic nerve swells. This condition, now known as spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome, has affected a significant number of astronauts. In some cases, vision never fully returns to normal. Space does not just weaken the body, it reshapes it. What makes this problem particularly serious is that gravity is not optional. It is not a lifestyle choice. It is a fundamental force. Every solution proposed to address gravity loss introduces new complications. Artificial gravity, often imagined through rotating spacecraft, is one such proposal. In theory, rotation creates centrifugal force that mimics gravity. In practice, the reality is far more complex. Rotating habitats introduce Coriolis effects. Movements feel distorted. Simple actions cause disorientation. Long-term exposure can lead to nausea and coordination issues. Engineering challenges multiply. Large structures must rotate smoothly. Structural stresses increase. Failure becomes catastrophic. Artificial gravity is not a clean fix. It is a compromise layered on top of compromises. Even if artificial gravity were perfected, it would still not replicate Earth. Gravity's strength matters, duration matters, consistency matters. Mars, for example, has only about 38% of Earth's gravity. We do not know whether the human body can remain healthy over generations in such an environment. There is no data. And in biology, absence of data is not reassurance. The deeper issue is that gravity is not a single variable. It interacts with everything else, with radiation, with bone chemistry, with muscle signaling, with neural development. Changing gravity changes the entire system. And systems do not fail cleanly. They fail in unpredictable ways. This leads to a difficult realization. Human struggle outside Earth is not caused by hostility alone. It is caused by mismatch, a mismatch between biology and environment. We are not merely visitors to Earth, we are products of it. Every attempt to live beyond Earth forces us to choose between adaptation and degradation. Either we radically alter the human body, or we accept long-term decline. There is no third option. And altering the human body raises questions that go far beyond engineering. At what point does adaptation stop being human? This is why gravity represents more than a technical challenge. It represents a boundary, a line between environments that support life naturally and those that do not. Earth did not just allow humanity to exist, it shaped humanity. Leaving it means leaving the conditions that made us possible. And gravity is only one piece of the puzzle. Even if the body could endure a different gravitational regime, another invisible force would continue to shape our fate. Radiation, distance, isolation. The struggle does not end with the body. It extends to the mind and to civilization itself. Gravity, the force that shaped us. Gravity is so constant in human life that we rarely notice it. It is always there, always pulling, always shaping. From the moment we are born, every cell in our body learns to live under its influence. Bones grow dense because gravity demands strength. Muscles develop because gravity resists movement. Blood circulates because gravity pulls it downward. Gravity is not just a force, it is a silent instructor. And humans are its students. When we leave Earth, gravity is the first teacher we lose. In orbit, gravity does not disappear entirely, but its grip weakens so dramatically that the body no longer recognizes its presence. This change may seem subtle. It is not. Without gravity, the body begins to reinterpret reality. Bones, no longer under constant load, begin to break down. Calcium leaches out. Structural density decreases. What took years to build is lost in months. Astronauts can lose up to 2% of bone mass per month in microgravity. On Earth, this level of bone loss would be considered a severe medical condition. In space, it is expected. Muscles follow the same pattern. The human body is efficient. If a system is no longer needed, it is reduced. In microgravity, muscles no longer fight resistance. Movement becomes effortless. The body responds logically. Muscle fibers shrink, strength declines, endurance fades. Even with daily exercise, even with carefully designed routines, muscle loss continues. The body understands something technology cannot explain away. This environment is not meant for it. The heart, an organ evolved to pump blood upward against Earth's gravity, begins to change. In microgravity, blood redistributes. Fluids shift toward the head. The heart works less. Over time, it reshapes itself. Astronauts often return to Earth with cardiovascular systems that struggle to readapt. Standing becomes difficult, blood pressure drops, fainting is common. Gravity, once taken for granted, suddenly feels overwhelming. Vision is also affected. As fluids move upward, pressure builds behind the eyes. The optic nerve swells. The shape of the eyeball subtly changes. This condition, now well documented, has left astronauts with permanent visual impairment. Space does not simply challenge eyesight, it alters it. What makes gravity loss particularly dangerous is that the damage compounds. Short missions cause measurable change, long missions deepen it. The human body does not stabilize in microgravity, it continues to deteriorate. There is no equilibrium. At this point, technology is often invoked as the solution: artificial gravity. Rotate a spacecraft, create centrifugal force, simulate Earth. On paper, the idea seems elegant. In reality, it is deeply complicated. Artificial gravity introduces new problems. Rotation causes disorientation. Coriolis forces distort movement. Simple actions become cognitively demanding. Engineering such systems requires scale, large structures, massive energy investment, increased mechanical risk. Artificial gravity is not a replacement for Earth. It is a compromise, and compromises carry costs. More importantly, artificial gravity does not solve the deeper issue. Human biology did not evolve for adjustable environments. It evolved for consistency. Earth's gravity never turns off, never fluctuates, never negotiates. The body expects this constancy. Space offers variability, and variability confuses biology. This reveals a critical insight. Gravity is not just a convenience, it is foundational. It shaped human anatomy over millions of years. Removing it is like removing oxygen. The body can survive briefly, but it cannot thrive. The struggle humans face outside Earth is not due to weakness, it is due to specialization. We are not general-purpose organisms, we are Earth-adapted organisms. Every success of human civilization has been built on a stable gravitational foundation. Agriculture, architecture, industry, medicine, all assume gravity. Take it away, and assumptions collapse. This leads to an uncomfortable realization. Human intelligence is not independent of environment. Our achievements are not portable. They are contextual. They work because Earth allows them to work. The dream of space habitation often treats gravity as a technical detail, something to be solved. But gravity is not a problem to fix. It is a condition to accept. Without it, the human body slowly unravels. If gravity alone can destabilize biology so profoundly, what does that say about the broader challenge of space? Gravity is only one variable. Radiation, isolation, distance, and psychology still remain. Each compounds the others. Space does not attack humans directly. It simply removes everything that makes humans functional. Gravity is the first layer, and without it, the struggle begins immediately. Perhaps the most revealing lesson is not about space, it is about Earth. Gravity reminds us that our planet is not just home, it is a finely tuned system that supports life effortlessly. What feels ordinary is actually extraordinary. Understanding gravity's role changes how we view human ambition. It reframes the question. The question is no longer, can humans live outside Earth? The question becomes, how much of Earth can we afford to lose before we lose ourselves?
Technology versus biology. Why machines can't save us. For much of modern history, whenever humanity encountered a limit, technology appeared to dissolve it. Cold climates were conquered with shelter. Darkness was defeated by artificial light. Distance collapsed under transportation and communication. Over time, this pattern shaped a powerful assumption that every problem is ultimately technical, and that biology, if inconvenient, can always be engineered around. Nowhere is this belief stronger than in our vision of life beyond Earth. When scientists describe the dangers of space, the response is almost reflexive. We'll build better spacecraft. We'll invent artificial gravity. We'll shield radiation. We'll use AI to compensate. The language is confident. The tone is optimistic. But this confidence hides a critical misunderstanding. Technology does not replace biology. It only negotiates with it. The human body is not a modular system. You cannot swap out gravity the way you swap out software. You cannot patch radiation exposure without consequences. Biology is not an engineering problem. It is an evolutionary inheritance. Consider artificial gravity, one of the most common solutions proposed for long-term space habitation. If gravity is essential, then simply recreate it. Spin a spacecraft, generate centrifugal force, simulate Earth-like conditions. On paper, the idea is elegant. In reality, it introduces new problems. Rotating habitats produce uneven gravity. The force varies depending on position. Movement becomes disorienting. The inner ear struggles to adapt. Coriolis effects distort perception. Simple motions can induce nausea. Long-term exposure is poorly understood. To reduce these effects, the structure must be enormous, and mass, once again, becomes the enemy. Artificial gravity does not eliminate the problem. It trades one set of biological stresses for another. Radiation shielding follows the same pattern. More shielding requires more material. More material requires more fuel. More fuel increases cost and complexity. Eventually, the spacecraft becomes impractical. Physics does not reward ambition. It enforces trade-offs. No known technology can fully shield humans from deep space radiation without creating new vulnerabilities. What about genetic engineering? Some suggest altering the human genome to better tolerate radiation or low gravity. But this raises questions far beyond engineering. Who decides what changes are acceptable? What unintended effects emerge? At what point does adaptation become transformation? Engineering biology does not preserve humanity. It redefines it. Artificial intelligence is often presented as the ultimate solution. AI can monitor health, predict failures, optimize systems. But AI cannot replace physiology. It cannot repair damaged DNA. It cannot prevent bone loss. It cannot supply gravity. AI can manage decline. It cannot stop it. The deeper issue is not technological capability. It is compatibility. The human body is optimized for a narrow range of conditions: temperature, pressure, gravity, radiation levels. Earth sits perfectly within this range. Space exists almost entirely outside it. Technology can buffer the difference. It cannot erase it. This leads to an uncomfortable conclusion. The more technology we add, the more fragile the system becomes. More components, more points of failure, more dependence on constant maintenance. On Earth, systems fail gradually. In space, they fail catastrophically. Technology does not simplify survival. It complicates it. There is also a psychological dimension to technological reliance. The belief that machines will save us encourages risk-taking. It breeds overconfidence. It shifts responsibility from human judgment to automated systems. When systems fail, humans are often unprepared to respond. History offers repeated examples. Complex systems work beautifully until they don't. The more layers of technology involved, the harder it becomes to diagnose failure. In space, there is no margin for uncertainty. There is no second chance. Perhaps the most dangerous illusion is believing that technology represents progress independent of environment. Technology evolved within Earth's constraints. It assumes gravity. It assumes atmosphere. It assumes stable temperatures. Remove those assumptions, and its reliability collapses. Space is not just hostile to humans, it is hostile to our machines. Every successful space mission is a triumph not of mastery, but of temporary alignment. For a brief moment, conditions remain within tolerable limits. But permanence demands more than tolerance. It demands harmony. And space does not offer harmony to human biology. This realization reframes the problem entirely. The question is not how advanced must our technology become. It is how far can biology be stretched before it breaks. So far, every answer points to the same conclusion: not very far. And this brings us to a more unsettling truth. The belief that technology will save us may be less about science and more about comfort. It allows us to imagine that no limit is final, that nature will eventually yield. But nature does not negotiate. It enforces. Technology can delay consequences. It cannot abolish them. And in space, delayed consequences are still consequences.
Technology cannot replace belonging. At this point, it is tempting to reach for one final argument: that technology will adapt faster than biology, that machines will compensate for what humans lack, that artificial systems will eventually make space feel normal. This belief is comforting. It allows us to imagine a future where human limitations are optional. But comfort is not evidence, and physics is indifferent to optimism. Technology can extend human capability. It can amplify strength, enhance perception, increase precision. But there is a difference between extending ability and replacing belonging. Human beings do not simply function, they belong. Belonging is not emotional sentiment, it is biological alignment. The human nervous system expects certain rhythms, a day-night cycle, a horizon that changes, gravity that constantly presses the body into place. These signals are not decorative. They regulate hormones, they anchor perception, they stabilize cognition. Technology can simulate fragments of these signals. It cannot reproduce the whole system. Consider artificial gravity. Rotating habitats are often presented as a definitive solution. Spin a structure fast enough and centrifugal force mimics gravity. In theory. In practice, the human vestibular system is sensitive. Rotation introduces Coriolis forces. Movement feels distorted. Balance becomes unreliable. Even small inconsistencies can produce nausea, disorientation, and long-term discomfort. Artificial gravity is not gravity. It is an approximation, and approximations accumulate cost. Then there is environmental control. Air composition, humidity, temperature, all must be actively maintained. On Earth, these conditions emerge naturally. In space, they must be engineered continuously. A single failure is not inconvenience, it is catastrophe. Technology does not replace nature. It imitates it under constant threat of collapse. Artificial intelligence is often cited as the final safeguard,
an ever-present system monitoring health, behavior, performance, detecting anomalies, preventing errors. But AI addresses symptoms, not origins. It can observe decline. It cannot prevent the conditions that cause it. Loneliness, for example, is not a data problem. It is an environmental one. No algorithm can replicate the subconscious reassurance of being surrounded by life. No system can simulate the grounding effect of a living planet. Humans evolved not merely to survive, but to orient. We orient ourselves within landscapes, within ecosystems, within societies. Space offers no such orientation, only containment. Over time, containment reshapes identity. When survival becomes the dominant goal, everything else contracts. Curiosity narrows, creativity fades, purpose simplifies. This is not failure of character, it is adaptive psychology. The mind prioritizes what keeps it alive. But civilization requires more than survival. It requires excess time, excess energy, excess safety. Only then do art, philosophy, and long-term thinking emerge. Space environments offer none of this naturally. Every action is measured, every resource rationed, every decision constrained. This is not the soil from which civilizations grow. Technology also introduces a subtle shift in psychological shift. When systems become responsible for survival, humans become passive participants in their own existence. Attention shifts outward to monitoring interfaces, status indicators, alerts. Life becomes mediated, not lived. On Earth, the environment absorbs our neglect. In space, neglect accumulates instantly. Constant vigilance is required, and vigilance is exhausting. No organism thrives under permanent alertness. This brings us to a difficult conclusion. Technology can keep humans alive in space. It cannot make space human. The distinction matters. Living is not the same as belonging, and belonging is not something that can be engineered. It emerges from compatibility. Earth is compatible with humans in ways we barely comprehend because we have never lived without it. The deeper issue is not whether technology will improve. It will. The question is whether improvement changes the fundamental mismatch between human biology and the space environment. So far, nothing suggests it does. There is also an ethical dimension. At what point does adaptation stop being support and start becoming alteration? If humans must radically modify their bodies, their reproduction, their psychology to exist in space, are they still human or something else entirely? This is not a hypothetical concern. Long-term space habitation may require genetic intervention. Radiation-resistant cells, altered bone metabolism, modified circadian rhythms. These changes are irreversible. They create divergence. Space does not just challenge humanity, it pressures humanity to transform. And transformation carries cost, not only biological, but cultural. Civilizations depend on continuity, shared experience, shared environment, shared vulnerability. When environments diverge radically, so do values. A species adapted for space would not see Earth the same way, nor would Earth-bound humans recognize themselves in that species. Technology accelerates possibility. It does not resolve consequence. And the consequences of adapting to space are profound. Perhaps this is the final misunderstanding. We assume that survival is the highest objective.
but survival without context is hollow. The question is not whether humans can exist in space. It is whether such existence preserves what makes us human. In trying to escape Earth, we may abandon the very conditions that gave rise to thought, reflection, and meaning. Technology cannot replace that, no matter how advanced it becomes.
Why humans struggle outside Earth. There is a final barrier that is often underestimated because it cannot be measured with instruments. It does not appear on engineering diagrams. It does not show up in radiation charts, and it cannot be solved with better materials. That barrier is the human mind. Human psychology evolved under very specific conditions. We evolved surrounded by life, by changing environments, by social interaction, by constant sensory variation. Even solitude on Earth is never complete. There are sounds, weather, movement, a horizon. Space removes almost all of this. Inside a spacecraft or habitat, the environment does not change. The walls are always the same distance away. The sounds are mechanical and repetitive. The lighting is artificial. Time loses texture. Days blur into one another. The brain, which relies on variation to regulate emotion, begins to struggle. In early missions, astronauts often report excitement, a sense of purpose, a feeling of historical significance. But over time, this fades. Routine replaces novelty. Maintenance replaces exploration. Survival becomes repetitive. Psychologists studying long-duration missions have identified a pattern. Stress does not peak immediately. It accumulates slowly. Small irritations grow. Minor conflicts intensify. Emotional resilience declines. This is not weakness. It is biology. Human brains evolved to resolve conflict through movement, by leaving, by seeking space, by changing surroundings. In space, there is nowhere to go, no room to retreat, no environment to escape into. Every emotion must be processed inside the same confined volume. This leads to a subtle but dangerous shift. The mind begins to turn inward. Thoughts loop. Worries amplify. Perceptions distort. Time feels slower. Motivation becomes fragile. Even highly trained individuals are not immune. One of the most striking psychological effects reported by astronauts is a change in self-perception. On Earth, identity is reinforced by society, by roles, by relationships, by context. In space, those reinforcements weaken. You are not a citizen, not a neighbor, not a participant in culture. You are a biological system inside a machine. This can create a sense of existential detachment, a feeling of unreality. Psychologists sometimes describe it as a form of dissociation. The mind begins to distance itself as a protective mechanism, but protection comes with a cost. Communication delays intensify this effect. When messages take minutes or hours to arrive, conversation loses immediacy. Emotional support becomes asynchronous. There is no real-time reassurance, no shared moment. Isolation deepens. Even video calls cannot replace presence. The brain interprets delay as absence. Over time, this erodes emotional grounding. Sleep patterns also degrade. Artificial lighting disrupts circadian rhythms. Microgravity affects blood flow to the brain. Stress hormones remain elevated. Fatigue becomes chronic, and fatigue impairs judgment. In space, a small cognitive error can have fatal consequences. A misread display, a delayed response, a forgotten procedure. Psychological strain translates directly into risk. There is also the problem of meaning.
In Earth, effort connects to visible outcomes. Work contributes to something larger. Progress is reinforced socially. In space, meaning becomes abstract. You maintain systems to maintain systems. Survival becomes self-referential. This can feel hollow. Over long durations, some individuals experience what psychologists call motivational collapse, not depression in the clinical sense, but a quiet erosion of purpose. The question shifts from "what am I doing?" to "why am I doing this?" This is where the romantic vision of space often breaks down. Exploration narratives focus on bravery and discovery, but sustained life requires something else: psychological sustainability. Technology can monitor mood, it can track sleep, it can flag anomalies, but it cannot generate meaning. No algorithm can provide purpose. No system can replace the social fabric that shaped the human mind. This does not mean humans cannot survive outside Earth for limited periods. They already have. But survival and thriving are not the same, and civilization demands more than survival. A spacefaring civilization would demand generations raised in artificial environments, children born without open skies, without weather, without ecosystems. The psychological consequences of this are unknown, and uncertainty at that scale is not trivial. When we imagine humanity expanding into space, we often project current minds into future environments, but environments shape minds. A radically different environment produces a radically different psychology. At some point, the question becomes unavoidable. Would those future beings still be human in any meaningful sense? This is not a rejection of exploration. It is a recognition of cost. Every environment extracts a price. Space extracts it from the mind. The struggle of humans outside Earth is not only about physics or biology. It is about identity, about belonging, about what the human mind needs to remain stable, creative, and meaningful. And this brings us to the final realization. The problem is not that space is hostile. The problem is that space is indifferent. It does not care about human psychology. It does not adjust to human needs. It simply exists. Understanding this is not pessimism. It is honesty. And honesty is the foundation of any future worth building.
The final boundary. What Earth actually means to humanity. At this point, after examining biology, physics, psychology, and civilization, one conclusion quietly emerges. Earth is not just where humans began. It is where humans make sense. For most of history, we assumed this was accidental, that Earth was simply the first step, a launch pad, a temporary cradle. But modern science suggests something far less convenient. Earth is not easily replaceable. The human body does not merely survive on Earth, it is synchronized with it. Gravity shapes our bones before birth. Atmospheric pressure shapes our lungs. Magnetic shielding protects our nervous system. Day and night regulate our hormones. Even our circadian rhythms are tuned to Earth's rotation. Remove one of these variables and the system destabilizes. Remove several and the system collapses. Space is not missing one ingredient, it is missing the entire recipe. This realization forces a shift in perspective. For centuries, progress meant expansion, more land, more resources, more territory. But expansion worked on Earth because Earth allowed it. Space does not. It resists us at every scale, not out of hostility, but indifference. This indifference is important. Space is not an enemy. It is not a challenge designed to be overcome. It is simply unconcerned with human survival. Physics does not reward ambition. Biology does not respond to optimism. They respond only to conditions. And the conditions of space do not favor human life. This does not mean space exploration is meaningless. On the contrary, space teaches us something Earth never could. It reveals the fragility of life. When Earth is seen from afar, as a small blue sphere suspended in darkness, it stops feeling ordinary. It becomes rare, almost improbable. From space, Earth is not just a planet, it is an exception. A narrow window where chemistry became biology, where biology became consciousness. This realization changes the question. Instead of asking, how do we leave Earth, we begin to ask, why would we abandon the only environment that made us possible? The dream of living elsewhere often carries an unspoken assumption that Earth will fail us, that environmental collapse, conflict, or disaster will force humanity outward. But space is not an escape hatch. It does not forgive mistakes. It does not offer abundance. It magnifies failure. If humanity struggles to maintain balance on a planet that evolved alongside us, what chance do we have in an environment that never cared whether we existed at all? This is not cynicism, it is systems thinking. There is also a deeper psychological layer to the desire to leave Earth. Expansion promises distance from responsibility. If Earth is no longer the only home, its fragility feels less urgent. But fragility does not disappear when it is ignored. It accumulates. True intelligence may not be measured by how far a species can travel, but how well it can sustain itself within limits. Every stable system in nature respects boundaries. Ecosystems, cells, planets. Systems that ignore limits collapse. Space does not remove limits, it enforces them, brutally, without negotiation. In that sense, space is not humanity's future, it is humanity's future. And the lesson is clear. Human beings are not weak because we cannot live anywhere. We are specialized, highly adapted to one very specific environment. That specialization is not a flaw. It is the reason consciousness exists at all. There may come a time when humans alter themselves so completely that they are no longer bound to Earth. But those beings will not be us. They will not share our biology, our psychology, or our sense of meaning. They will be something else entirely. Until then, Earth remains the only place where human life is not an experiment, not a constant emergency, not a fragile simulation. Earth is where life is effortless enough to allow thought, reflection, culture, love. Perhaps this is the quiet truth space has been trying to show us all along. Not that humanity is destined for the stars, but that humanity is rare enough to deserve preservation exactly where it is. If progress is redefined not as escape, but as stewardship, the future looks different. Less dramatic, less cinematic, but far more real. The most advanced civilization may not be the one that spreads itself thin across hostile environments. It may be the one that learns to live intelligently within the only environment that ever truly welcomed us. Space will always be there, silent, vast, unchanged. Earth will not. Its fate depends entirely on what we choose to understand, and whether we listen to what physics, biology, and reality itself have been quietly telling us.